Discover the incredible and touching secrets of ancient Greece. 5 transformative stories revealed. As Sarah stood before her cluttered desk, preparing notes for her upcoming lecture on ancient Greece, the sensation of being unseen wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Colleagues with their flashy presentations and charismatic performances overshadowed her quiet passion for teaching. Instead of being a voice of inspiration, she felt like an inconspicuous footnote in the vibrant narrative of academia. Even the hallway conversations buzzed around her like bees, leaving her feeling like wallpaper in a room full of vivid art. A rain tapping steadily against the window caught her attention, a rhythmic reminder of the storm brewing within her. Memories of her great-grandfather, a stoic man who battled adversity as an immigrant, flickered through his mind. Yet despite his legacy of courage, Sarah felt a disconnect. His stories of sacrifice were lost in her struggle for validation. Did she dare to accept the recognition she craved when it seemed so many before her had given so much just to let her dream bloom? Her finger absently traced the edge of a weathered journal she discovered last week while cleaning the attic. A bridge across time, the pages chronicled her great-grandfather's trials, the prejudice, the hardships, the resilience. His unwavering determination clashed with her own wavering confidence. Internal conflict roiled in her mind. What if she truly embraced his legacy? Would it mean stepping into the limelight she feared? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension between ambition and ancestry tightened like a noose. What sacrifices had her family made for her? Every tuition payment felt colossal, a burden pulled down on her shoulders. She could feel the pressure within her, twisting her thoughts into knots. As she stapled her presentation together, weaving ancient Greek heroes' narratives with her great-grandfather's trials, unease gripped her. If her presentation garnered attention, would that make her feel validated or exposed? With each passing hour, uncertainty deepened. Would she allow her dreams to emerge from the shadows? Yet, the day her presentation gained media attention shifted everything. The inundation of community reactions sent a ripple through her tight-knit town, unearthing buried judgment. Whispers turned into echoes, and she could feel the weight of secrets lurking beneath polite exchanges.
Her breath quickened as she stood poised before a room of curious faces. Her heart raced at the juxtaposition of her grandfather's quiet perseverance and her own booming ambition. The floodgates of her emotions widened at the thought of their paths colliding on the precipice of public scrutiny. Then, a question emerged from the audience, sharp as glass. What sacrifices have you made in pursuit of your ambition? The world around her blurred as she fought to grasp an answer, the weight of her heritage and the desperation for recognition anchoring her to the spot. Sarah knew the gravity of that question held the power to unravel everything she thought she understood about success and legacy. As she stood ready to respond, an unseen force tugged her between the movements of the past and the uncharted depths of her future. The very air seemed to pulse with potential, and she felt the quake of destiny rumble beneath her feet. What would she reveal, and how would it shape not just her life, but the lives entwined within her family's untold legacy? The question hung in the air like a dense fog, suffocating and yet electrifying. The faces in the audience stared intently, shadows flickering across their features as uncertainty gripped Sarah's heart. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her great-grandfather's legacy pressing down as she opened her mouth to respond. "Sacrifices?" she echoed, the word reverberating in her mind, each syllable a reminder of the struggles woven into her family's history. The challenge was to not only share her own truth, but to honor his strength, the very essence that had driven her here. "My great-grandfather left everything behind. He faced prejudice and hardship so that his family could have a chance, so I could stand here today. But in pursuing my dream, I often feel like I'm betraying that sacrifice." As the words tumbled from her lips, something shifted inside her. Each declaration peeled back layers of insecurity, exposing raw motives and fears. The eyes of the audience deepened in understanding. They weren't just spectators. They were mirrors reflecting her doubts back at her, challenging her to dig deeper. Clenching her fists, Sarah leaned forward, her voice gaining strength. "In pursuing ambition, I questioned whether material recognition was even worthy of their sacrifices. Why does it feel like a burden rather than a blessing?" She noted the subtle nods among her peers. It resonated. The realization struck her. Acknowledgement was not the enemy. It was part of the journey. A flicker of clarity broke through her internal chaos. Embracing her narrative would not diminish her great-grandfather's plight. Instead, it would complete it. The connection felt electric, paving a path through the fog of disbelief that held her captive. Each heartbeat resonated with newfound conviction. She was tired of standing on the perimeter, shadows lurking behind her.
I owe it to him and to myself to embrace my ambitions fully, she declared, feeling her words transform into a beacon. Every late night, every paper turned in was possible because of his strength. I can no longer hide. With each passing sentence, she unearthed buried sentiments, the fear of failure, the shame of wanting more, and the honor it brought to the ancestors who dreamed for her. Yet, just as resolve settled within her, the echo of another question lurked, unraveling the newfound strength she was attempting to build. You speak of ambition, but what do you truly fear? Is it the judgment of those around you, or something deeper? It came from the back, a piercing reminder that her personal battle was not yet over. Was it fear of public failure, the potential disdain from her peers? Or perhaps it was a deeper fear of discovering she was not as talented as she believed, the dark whispers that taunted her in quiet moments. Nervous energy crackled through her as she recognized the vulnerability hidden within that question. Would she dare to expose the rawness of her insecurities, or would she clench her fists against the tidal wave of truth? The stage felt both liberating and confining, forcing her to confront the very depths of her ambition. And as she stood there, poised on the edge of revelation, Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. It was time for a reckoning, a moment where she could no longer exist in the shadows of legacy, but define her own path. Yet she hesitated. Would she seize this opportunity to be wholly herself, risking exposure, or retreat back into the guise of anonymity that had sheltered her for so long? And so she lingered there, contemplating the crucible of fear and aspiration, the intricate dance between past and future. This choice loomed before her, a threshold potentially reshaping her existence. Would she step into the light, revealing her authentic self, ready to honor her family's sacrifice, or wade back into the familiar comforts of silence? A hush descended upon the audience, thickening the air as the weight of silence pressed against Sarah's chest. Time seemed unwieldy. Each second felt like an eternity, and in that bleak expanse, uncertainty coiled tighter around her thoughts. Was this the moment where she would dismantle the fortress she had built around her insecurities, or would she retreat, allowing fear to reign once more? With a sudden surge of defiance, the nascent courage blossoming inside her burgeoned. She could feel her heart racing, not with trepidation, but with a burgeoning excitement for the truth she was about to unveil. She straightened, fighting against the instinct to shy away from her authentic self. "I fear not living up to the legacy," she admitted, her voice unwavering as it echoed in the stillness. "But this fear cannot dictate my future any longer."
Feeling the audience's palpable shift, a collective intake of breath, it occurred to her that vulnerability might not be her enemy, but a catalyst for growth. What if facing her own fears could forge a stronger connection not only to her legacy, but to herself? As she spoke, she crafted a mental image of her great-grandfather, a man whose sacrifices spurred generations forward. Surely he did not endure hardship for his descendants to cower under the weight of expectations. What was she doing, diluting her dreams with self-imposed limitations? The room around her, once intimidating, transformed into a nurturing space. Her ambition, she realized, was not just about personal accolades. It was about honoring those who came before her by embracing the potential for greatness they had envisioned. The distinction between striving for success and being worthy of it began to clarify with each word she spoke. In acknowledging my fears, I free myself from their grasp. The question is no longer whether I deserve success, but whether I will let anything, self-doubt included, hold me back from making the most of my opportunities. Each declaration strengthened her resolve,
revealing the delicate balance between humility and ambition. Yet an unsettling thought gnawed at her in the quiet corners of her mind. Had she truly confronted the depths of her fears, or merely skimmed the surface? A knot twisted uncomfortably within her, awakening the realization that this was not merely about public judgment. It was a deeper dance with her own self-worth and identity. The fear she must confront resided deep within, a feeling rooted in her relationship with success. What would it mean to achieve her dreams, to bask in recognition, while a part of her felt tethered to the idea of unworthiness? Sensing that the moment was ripe, Sarah took a deep breath and gazed into the eyes of the audience, many of whom were grappling with their own ambitions and fears. I may stumble, I may struggle, but I cannot let my ancestors' dreams die within me. I owe it to them and to myself to embrace every part of who I am. As the words settled in the air, a wave of solidarity washed over the audience. But just as the warmth of connection swelled, the gnawing uncertainty flickered in her mind. Would embracing her journey catalyze a fear of its own? The looming prospect of failing her family's legacy fueled her hopes and haunted her dreams. Sarah realized this confrontation with her deeper fears was only the beginning. She needed to explore what lay beneath the surface of her ambitions, peering into the shadows to fully understand her relationship with success. Would she find the tenacity to embrace the unknown, or would she retreat again, sealing away the very potential she was meant to fulfill? The upcoming journey promised not just growth, but the chance to uncover the hidden layers of herself.
As she contemplated her next steps, a hush enveloped her once more, this time filled with determination. This understanding fueled her resolve. The upcoming turning point would not just redefine what it meant to be ambitious, it would mark a crucial evolution in her personal journey. Sarah felt a stirring inside her, compelling her forward, pushing past the boundary where fear morphed into opportunity. The moment lay ahead, and she was ready to confront whatever awaited her beyond the light. But with the prospect of discovery looming, she couldn't shake the unsettling question: what truths would she unearth as she ventured deeper into her own psyche? As the applause cascaded around her, Sarah's heart still raced, echoing the mix of exhilaration and trepidation inside her. She stepped off the stage, the electrifying energy still coursing through her. But beneath the surface, a daunting quiet began to take shape. The weight of her own words hung heavily, pushing her toward an understanding of how they would ripple out into her life moving forward. In the hushed aftermath, she cast a glance around the room, not at the audience, but at herself. The applause felt comforting, but it also stirred an unsettling question. How would this newfound courage manifest when she left this space, back into the intricacies of her everyday life? Would she truly carry this moment forward, or let it dissipate like a mist before dawn? As she walked through the dimly lit hall, each echo of her footsteps resonated with a question she couldn't ignore. She had tasted the thrill of vulnerability, but now came the hard part, integrating this experience into her reality and examining the path ahead with unflinching honesty. It was one thing to speak of courage publicly, it was another to embody it daily. A flutter of panic commenced. Could she confront the same depth of fear in her life beyond the stage? As she retraced her thoughts, the mental images of her great-grandfather's sacrifices nudged her forward. He faced the unknown with unwavering resolve. She needed to channel that legacy, but was unaware of how it would translate in practical terms. Emboldened, she made a choice. Sarah decided to create a tangible plan, a series of steps that would push her further from the comfort of her insecurities. She would start by seeking out opportunities that would globally amplify her voice. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Until now, the idea of public speaking had loomed large, intimidating her beyond reason, yet here she was, with a chance to turn that fear into purpose. Over the next few days, ideas began to flourish. She identified local community forums that invited speakers. She even contemplated webinars where her voice could reach those who needed assurance in their own journeys. With each prospect, a flicker of excitement ignited, revealing untapped reserves of confidence that had long been dormant.
But the shadows of doubt still lingered, whispering insidiously that she would be unworthy of the platform she envisioned. "What if I fail?" echoed through her mind, a remnant continual reminder of her past. Yet, wasn't that the very essence of her evolution? The decision to confront failure, to risk the embarrassment of stumbling, was a step toward rewriting her narrative. Each night, as she reviews her plan, she begins to visualize her success, not in terms of accolades, but as an internal transformation. Each speaking opportunity was not merely a platform,
It was a chance to explore the hidden corners of her potential, of her identity. The notion of growth burrowed deeper within her as she wrote outlines of what she wanted to convey, crafting statements not just for her audience, but for herself, affirmations that she was worthy. But as the week drew to a close, a profound realization settled over her. This journey was not solely about sharing her story. It was about facing the dark specters of her self-doubt head-on. Suddenly, another thought pierced through her contemplations. What if sharing her experiences meant that she had to revisit painful memories? Would she uncover truths that she had previously buried to uphold a facade of strength? She stared at her reflection in the mirror. This venture beckoned her to forego the safety net of comfortable silence. The next chapter required her to dig deep, challenge herself, and confront uncomfortable realities that threatened to hinder her growth. As Sarah's resolve deepened, so did the labyrinthine questions. Would exposing her vulnerabilities lead to brilliance, or open up old wounds, stitching a path towards courage or fear once more? With a knot twisting in her stomach, the next opportunity bounced in her mind, igniting tension anew. The call for speakers at a workshop themed Confronting Fear through Storytelling. The decision loomed. Would she step into the light, or let her shadow keep her in darkness? The following morning, sunlight streamed through Sarah's window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Yet even the warmth of the sun could not penetrate the chill settling in her bones. She sat on the edge of her bed, a mix of anticipation and dread coiling in her stomach like a rattlesnake ready to strike. The workshop loomed on the horizon, an unavoidable test of her commitments to herself. Navigating her morning routine became a matter of distraction, each task undertaken as if it required significant effort. Showering, dressing, simple acts distorted into monumental challenges. As she pulled on her favorite blue sweater, the one that reminded her of home, she felt a flicker of comfort, but a pang of doubt swiftly followed. A million thoughts tumbled through her mind, each louder than the last. What if I'm not articulate? What if my story isn't enough? Each question tightened the knot within her.
Yet with each passing moment, she reminded herself of her purpose. This was not about perfection, but authenticity. Sarah grabbed a notepad and penned a few powerful affirmations, her pen moving with urgency across the page. I have a unique perspective. My voice matters. I am enough. Reading these statements aloud felt liberating. They cut through the suffocating doubts like a knife, creating space for her courage to breathe. That evening, she took a moment to revisit the outline for talk. The workshop was scheduled for 2 days from now, and with every detail she revised, she sensed a flickering flame of determination rekindle inside. It wasn't just about sharing her own journey. It was about connecting to others navigating their own fears. She needed to be brave. However, shadows of uncertainty still lurked. The stakes felt high. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see herself standing on that stage again, only this time her voice faltering, her story muddled. Soon she couldn't escape the image of her great-grandfather, how he faced his own challenges. What would he say to her now? Embrace the unknown, she whispered aloud, as if hoping he could hear. The night stretched on, and she practiced her speech until her throat was dry, the words almost becoming an extension of her thoughts. Yet each rehearsal felt suffused with reluctance. It was as though she stood at the edge of a precipice, gazing down into an abyss. Was she willing to leap, or would she retreat back into the comforting arms of silence? The fear of vulnerability gnawed at her, whispering tales of past failures like an insistent ghost. Memories flooded back, moments where her courage had faltered, where she chose safety over possibility. She had grown accustomed to living within her own walls, and the prospect of sharing her truth seemed to threaten the very foundation of that sanctuary. Driven to confront her fears, Sarah decided to reach out to peers who had shared similar experiences. She initiated a group chat, a digital safe space where they could discuss the upcoming challenge. To her surprise, responses flooded in. Each person shared insights, fears, and encouragement. The community fortification began to chip away at her anxiety, igniting a subtle realization: she was not alone in this. As momentum built within her, another thought emerged, a stark and revealing query. How often had she allowed the specter of her fears to dictate her choices? The thrill of vulnerability began to outweigh her reluctance, but the nagging doubt still lingered. Just when she thought she had fortified her resolve, the realization struck hard. What if the workshop demanded more than just her narrative? What if it called for a level of introspection she wasn't ready to face? Staring into the mirror now felt different. No longer was the reflection merely a face. It was the embodiment of resilience, and that revelation stung her with transformative power.
Yet,
Standing at the threshold of her emotional expedition, she understood that what lay ahead was not merely about confrontation, but integration, hers and others. The workshop beckoned, a siren's call that both fascinated and frightened her, intensifying the reality that perhaps this time she was not just testing her boundaries, but setting the stage for what could be a life-altering journey. The moment arrived when the realization struck deeper. Would she merely recite her thoughts, or could she truly transform them into an experience that inspired others? And so she compelled herself to take the leap, edging closer to the unknown and whispering to herself for what felt like the 1,000th time, "I can do this." But with her heart pounding in her chest, one powerful thought emerged. The workshop was just a door. What if stepping through meant unveiling a history she had long kept hidden? The morning of the workshop arrived with an unnatural stillness, as if the world itself held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. Sarah awoke to a slight drizzle tapping against her window, a reminder that even the most beautiful mornings can start under a veil of gray. The apprehension that nestled in her chest didn't dissipate as she moved through her morning tasks, but there was a distinct change in the air, an electrifying tension that urged her to confront her inner fears head-on. As she prepared in front of the mirror, her eyes studied not just the reflection, but the emotion swirling behind them. Today was not just about sharing her story, it was a reckoning, a declaration of self-worth that transcended mere words. That realization struck her hard. Whether the audience would embrace her message or not was almost secondary. What mattered most was the courage to stand and deliver it, a feat often harder than the act itself. With her notepad in hand, she flipped through the pages filled with thoughts, affirmations, and dreams. This wasn't just a to-do list, it was a window into her soul, revealing aspects of herself she had once shrouded in hesitation. "I will be heard," she repeated aloud, her voice firm and steady. After rehearsing her speaking points for what felt like the 100th time, a rising conviction swept over her. Stepping outside, she inhaled the cool, fresh air, allowing it to seep into her lungs like a powerful elixir. As raindrops fell softly, she could almost sense the universe conspiring to cleanse away her fears. Each drop drummed a steady rhythm, encouraging her to step out of the shadows and into the light, a powerful metaphor she clung to fiercely. Arriving at the venue, Sarah's heart raced, a tumultuous blend of excitement and anxiety surged through her. The space was buzzing with anticipation, yet her footsteps felt heavy as they carried her toward the entrance. She paused, taking a deep breath before pushing through the door, recognizing the internal struggle of wanting to retreat while also wanting to leap. Once inside, she observed the crowd, a melange of familiar faces and strangers who seemed absorbed in conversation about their own narratives. What struck her was a palpable sense of vulnerability hanging in the air, which resonated with her spirit. As she moved further into the room, Sarah felt an awakening. The shared humanity in the room created an invisible tether that connected them all, a collective understanding of fear and hope. Amid the mingling voices, she caught snippets of stories interwoven with laughter and anxious excitement. Each tale recounted echoed her own sentiments, and suddenly the weight of isolation began to lift. It dawned on her that everyone had been wrestling with their demons, some more visible than others. Wasn't that the essence of being human? She sought out familiar faces in the crowd who had taken courage to voice their fears in their group chat, individuals she now viewed as allies in this journey. As they shared pre-speech jitters and warm smiles, a camaraderie developed that fueled her own resolve. Feeling emboldened, she allowed herself to step deeply into the experience, leaning into the connection rather than shying away from it. Yet, moments before she was set to take the stage, a wave of doubt crashed over her, threatening to drown out her newfound confidence. What if she faltered? What if her own truth did not resonate? As these thoughts washed over her like cold waves, Sarah caught herself. Instead of surrendering to fear, she reflected on the very essence of her journey. This was not merely about delivering an inspirational speech, it was about breaking the silence around her own struggles. Her internal monologue morphed. What if today marked the beginning of something extraordinary? The question ignited a fire within her, pushing aside her reservations. Stepping towards the stage felt like walking into a spotlight that could illuminate or expose all her vulnerabilities. But this time, instead of retreating, she embraced her chance to be raw and real, uncertain but unwavering. The moment loomed before her like a cascade of light. As she took a deep breath, she stepped into that light, poised to transform what had once been hidden into an experience that could potentially connect with someone else's soul. What began as a tremble morphed into a surge of power. Perhaps this was the day she would discover not just the power of her voice, but the strength woven into every story shared, hers and those of others. And as the murmurs quieted, all she could think was, what if today she found strength in her vulnerability, not just for herself, but for everyone in the room? Little did she know the true unveiling was yet to come. What secrets and revelations would emerge as she spoke?
As Sarah stepped onto the stage, the spotlight enveloped her, a warm embrace that transformed her trepidation into a channel for expression.
The faces before her shifted into a blur, but their eyes, some glistening with tears, others filled with anticipation, invited her to share the depths of her being. The moment crystallized into something deeper than fear. It was an opportunity to connect, to reveal her authentic self. With her heart pounding in synchrony with her thoughts, she began to speak, carefully choosing each word as if they were brushstrokes painting a picture of her journey. "I've spent years hiding behind a facade," she declared, her voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "Today, I choose to expose my truth." The words flowed from her, each syllable a step closer to the profound connection she yearned to foster. As she shared her own struggles, her bouts of self-doubt, the relentless comparing of herself to others, and her battle with a voice that often felt silenced, she watched for the reactions in the audience. Heads nodded, eyes widened in solidarity. A small group at the front leaned in closer, their expressions reflecting a shared understanding of her plight. In those instant realizations, she grasped that she was not alone in her journey. Each shared breath was a testament to collective vulnerability. Just as she prepared to touch on her breakthrough moments, where the storm within her began to shift, she paused. The crowd leaned in. Their energy seemed to charge the atmosphere. Unaccustomed to the raw honesty spilling from her lips, Sarah battled against the urge to retreat into safer territory. But something deep within urged her to remain authentic, to trust the process. "I realized that my past does not define me," she continued, a tremor of excitement coursing through her as the words resonated with her newfound clarity. "Instead, I've learned to embrace it, to transform it into my strength." As she spoke, fragments of her former self began to crystallize into something powerful. The years of self-criticism gave way to self-acceptance, and she felt the lingering doubts disintegrate like sandcastles washed away by the tide. With each revelation, she witnessed numerous expressions in the crowd shift from anxiety to empowerment. Some held on to their notebooks with fervent determination, jotting down her words as if they were keys unlocking their own hidden doors. The unspoken connection vibrated in the air, binding them together in shared resilience. Yet, in the midst of her triumph, a nagging thought encroached her mind. Had she revealed too much? Was exposing her vulnerabilities a path to empowerment or potential judgment? But beneath that doubt loomed a deeper truth. Her story could ignite a spark for someone else, a thread of hope that could weave through another's darkness. Choosing to confront her hesitations, she took a step back, allowing silence to settle and fill the space like an intimate breath. Sarah scanned the audience, feeling a wave of interconnectedness wash over her. What if, out of this endeavor, she not only discovered her own voice, but inspired someone else to uncover theirs as well? As the silence enveloped the room, a powerful realization struck her. This moment marked not just an ending, but a profound beginning. To break the silence surrounding personal struggles was a commitment, one she was ready to make not just for herself, but for everyone gathered. Then, unexpectedly, an intriguing question echoed in her mind. What if she could do more than share her story? What if she could challenge herself to lead a discussion, to facilitate an exchange of not just stories, but strategies for overcoming internal battles? The thought ignited a fervor within her, awakening a new facet of her identity. As she concluded her speech, the applause erupted like a crescendo. The room vibrated with energy, yet all she could think was, what awaited her in the conversations that would surely follow? Little did she know that in stepping into her truth, she had not only transformed her narrative, but had also set the stage for a new chapter in her life, one filled with possibilities and connections she had yet to explore. In the days that followed her speech, Sarah found herself riding an unexpected wave of adrenaline. The applause still echoed in her mind, but it was the conversations that had ignited her passion for change. During the post-event mingling, people approached her not just to express gratitude, but to delve deeper into their own stories, each one revealing a thread of struggle that resonated with hers. It was more than mere conversation. It was a collective unveiling of vulnerabilities, a tapestry woven from shared experiences.
As she reflected on these interactions, she realized the weight of what had transpired. They were not just fleeting moments, but invitations to cultivate an ongoing dialogue. Could she facilitate something larger? A workshop, perhaps? The mere idea sent shivers down her spine, a mix of excitement and fear bubbling within her. Unlike the confines of her past, where she had only sought to understand herself, she now felt urged to lead others to their own revelations. She spent hours drafting potential outlines for her first workshop, eagerly free-writing thoughts on a clean sheet of paper. Yet as reality settled in, doubts began to infiltrate her enthusiasm. Would people take her seriously? Could she truly handle leading a group through their emotional journeys? The weight of her responsibilities grew heavier, intertwining with her desires. Each time she made progress, those voices of doubt would creep in and hold her back. But Sarah had learned the art of wrestling with uncertainty. A flicker of memory sparked within her, recalling moments when she overcame fears in the past. Every instance, no matter how small, had equipped her with resilience. She resolved to channel that spirit of determination, not only for herself, but for those who sought her guidance.
Navigating through her anxieties, Sarah scheduled meetings with a few of the individuals she had spoken to after the event. Her aim was to gauge interest and brainstorm ideas for the workshop together. As the discussions unfolded, she noticed something remarkable. They too were confronting their fears about sharing their truths. Each conversation morphed into a refuge, a space where doubts were admitted freely and encouragement replaced criticism. What unfolded over those meetings was nothing short of transformative. She witnessed their reluctance shift to enthusiasm, her vision for the workshop slowly crystallizing. They began to see the potential not only in sharing their stories, but in the collaborative power of vulnerability. By the end of her discussions, Sarah felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the sense of purpose written in their collective aspirations. Her internal dialogue shifted as well, no longer veering towards self-doubt, but peppered with determination and strategy. How could she structure the sessions to allow everyone a place to share and develop? What tools could empower them? Those questions pushed her to action. She began researching activities, techniques, and frameworks that would create a nurturing yet challenging atmosphere. In the midst of her preparations, she experienced an unsettling moment. Sitting in her favorite coffee shop, she felt the familiar sting of imposter syndrome creeping back into her thoughts, whispering that others had a greater claim to guide discussions because of their credentials. How could she possibly see herself as a leader in this field? Yet confronting those feelings had become a part of her journey. She paused, breathed deeply, and recognized the irony in her fears. This was the very essence of what she wanted to communicate, the courage to step beyond discomfort. She could model vulnerability for others, leading with authenticity rather than credentials. The culmination of her commitment materialized into an initial workshop date. As she typed the announcement into social media, her pulse quickened with anticipation and fear in equal measure. Would they come? Would they resonate with her vision? These questions churned within her, each stirring a blend of excitement and apprehension. As she hit send, a new query rummaged through her mind. What if this workshop could become a catalyst for a greater movement of personal transformation? What if each session inspired not only the attendees, but rippled out into wider circles, connecting lives in ways she could not yet imagine? Her thoughts entwined to form a web of possibilities that dangled enticingly before her. With the first wave of responses flooding in, she began to concoct a plan to make her vision a reality. However, even as hope began to glow within her, a darker shadow loomed. What if she failed to connect with them once they gathered? What if her efforts fell flat?
As the doubts lurked at the edges of her optimism, Sarah prepared to face this impending challenge, ready to fight for her vision. After all, this was not just about her journey, but the potential awakening of countless others. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and thought fiercely. The time had come to face not just her fears, but the pivotal moment that could change everything. Would this workshop truly reflect her truth, or would it expose her as an imposter? Only one way to find out. The days leading up to the workshop were a complex dance of anticipation and dread. Sarah immersed herself in preparation. There were notes filled with activities, prompts, and a detailed agenda scrawled across multiple pages in her notebook. Each potential exercise was aimed at creating a safe space for sharing, the heart of her vision. Yet, alongside her excitement, doubt loomed like a persistent shadow. In quieter moments, she questioned whether she had adequately considered the emotional safety of her participants. Would her outline be sufficient? She remembered the trembling voices of her peers as they shared their truths. Would she truly be equipped to handle the weight of their stories? Picturing herself in front of the group, the image of a confident guide she envisioned sometimes felt like a cruel joke. Then there were the logistical details. She found herself obsessively double-checking logistics, reserving the space, preparing materials, and confirming the equipment.
As she punched details into her calendar, she felt like a frantic organizer preparing for a high-stakes event, the pressure palpable. Finally, she had to confront what lay at the core of it all, a deep-rooted desire to connect, to make a difference. On the eve of the workshop, anxiety took hold, clawing at her midsection. She tossed and turned, plagued by questions. What if her plan didn't resonate? What if they were disappointed? As midnight came and went, her mind wrestled with one persistent thought. Who was she to lead this conversation? Flashes of doubt turned into a panic that engulfed her, and she felt the urge to cancel everything. But as dawn broke and sunlight streamed through her window, her resolve began to reemerge. She reminded herself of the conversations that had filled her heart with hope, their shared vulnerabilities. Each anecdote fed into the vision of what this workshop could be. They had shared their struggles, and now she would honor that by creating a space for exploration and growth. With each heartbeat, she felt a flicker of purpose igniting. As she dressed for the day, the mirror reflected more than just her exterior. It captured someone caught between fear and fierce determination. She took a moment, closed her eyes, and spoke aloud a mantra she had practiced. I am enough. I am here to listen. It was a declaration that reminded her of the power of presence, of simply being there. As she arrived at the venue, the air buzzed with potential.
Chairs arranged in a circle felt welcoming and intimate. Sarah took a moment to breathe deeply, centering herself. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now, faced with the palpable energy of the space, she felt both raw and energized. Participants began to trickle in, each stepping into an unknown yet familiar realm. Waves of greeting filled the room, and conversations blossomed. Wanting to create a sense of community, Sarah introduced herself with vulnerability, sharing just a snippet of her own journey. As she spoke, she saw them nodding, engaged. Her fear slowly dissipated. However, as she launched into the first activity, a thick tension crept in, as silence hung over the group. Would they trust her with their stories? Would they brave the depths of their feelings? Suddenly, she was thrust into the very heart of her anxiety, an internal battle brewing as uncertainty clouded her confidence. All right, let's start by sharing our intentions for today, she said, searching their faces for connection. The silence stretched, heavy and daunting. Just as doubt began to swirl again, a voice broke through, hesitant but firm. I want to be heard. And with that, the floodgates opened. Encouraged, others followed suit, each revealing fragments of themselves. Sarah found herself swept up in the journey, reflecting on their collective stories. But amid her joy, a new realization sparked. Her role was far more complex than she had anticipated. Could she not only guide, but also confront unforeseen emotional challenges that arose? The truth of facilitation was becoming clearer. It was as much about navigating the uncomfortable as fostering the connection. Would she manage the weight of their shared burdens without losing sight of her own truth? The workshop was just beginning, and tension rose anew as she recognized that moments of confrontation were inevitable, not just for her participants, but for herself as well. As stories flowed and the group began to bond, one thought lingered uncomfortably in the back of her mind. What if they faced something truly dark that she couldn't address? With the workshop still unfolding, Sarah braced herself for the challenges ahead, knowing the journey had only just begun. As the last echoes of shared stories faded, Sarah sensed a palpable shift in the atmosphere of the room. The vulnerable exchanges had not only lightened individual burdens, but had also woven a collective tapestry of resilience and hope. Yet beneath that tapestry, shadows still loomed. Her own uncertainties about leadership and facilitation flickered in the dim corners of her thoughts. Each participant had offered pieces of themselves, but what part could she truly play in guiding them through their emotional landscapes? Determined to harness the energy that buzzed in the room, she decided to lead them into a pivotal moment. Let's reflect together, she said, her voice steady yet infused with the excitement greater than her fears.
Take a minute to jot down the key takeaways from today. What have you learned about yourselves? As participants bent over their notebooks, Sarah allowed herself to absorb the insights being explored. She began to see her initial trepidation transform into something powerful and profound. Leading wasn't about having all the answers or being free of doubt. It was about creating a space where others felt safe to share their journeys, where she felt the echo of their revelations ricocheting back to her, encouraging her own growth along the way. When everyone settled back into their seats, Sarah opened the floor. Who would like to share what they've written?
The invite hung in the air, a formidable challenge that demanded courage. To her surprise, a woman at the back raised her hand, her voice trembling slightly. "Today, I realized I'm not alone in this struggle. It's been hard to admit that I need help." The genuine acknowledgement of vulnerability felt like a thread pulling the group closer. One by one, voices chimed in, each illuminating dark corners they had hidden for too long, a cascade of emotions that reflected back her journey. As she listened, the stirrings of her own narrative intertwined with theirs, creating a dynamic interplay that forged connections, erasing the isolation that had once threatened to engulf her. In that moment, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her insecurities began to transform into offerings. It dawned on her that her hesitations had influenced her desire to bring the right guidance, not through authority, but through shared experience. This workshop was as much about her evolution as it was about anyone else's. The rhythm of sharing continued, and Sarah found herself weaving anecdotal responses, touching on parts of her own experience that resonated with their stories. The exchanges became a dance, comforting surprises that revealed unexpected layers of her identity. She spoke about her great-grandfather, the sacrifices he made, and her journey into academia, the struggles she faced while pursuing her dreams. And then, in an unexpected moment, she allowed herself to embrace the full weight of her journey. "I used to think that vulnerability meant weakness," she confessed, "but I've come to realize it's the bridge to true connection. By standing here with you, sharing our struggles, I feel empowered, and so can you." The room buzzed with emotion, with a clarity that punctuated the air. It was a realization they all shared, that in acknowledging their vulnerabilities, they were generating strength as a collective. As the workshop drew to a close, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment that resonated deep within. The participants, with smiles and tears intertwined, approached her, expressing gratitude for the space she had created. They felt seen, heard, and encouraged to continue sharing, both in the confines of the workshop and in the world that awaited them outside.
For Sarah, the journey had culminated not just in sharing her truths, but in creating an environment where vulnerability transformed into connection. She stood beside her collective of unveiled stories, realizing that purpose was not merely about individual aspirations, but about the courage to embrace them together. In the days following the workshop, messages flowed in, participants expressing ongoing reflections, successes, and the courage to continue sharing their stories. Sarah found herself enveloped in a movement she hadn't expected, one that grew organically from the seeds of bravery planted in that room. Finally, as she gazed at her reflection in the mirror, she no longer saw a woman riddled with insecurities, but one equipped with courage and confidence. She had risen from the shadows of her heritage, honored her ancestors by stepping into the light, and transformed her past into a tool for connection. Sarah fully embraced her calling, establishing a monthly meetup, building on the momentum of that first successful workshop. As her identity as a facilitator aligned with her journey of self-acceptance, she committed to sharing her voice, not only inspiring others, but remaining a vigilant steward of her own narrative, echoing her great-grandfather's legacy while leading others to find their own. Nothing felt better than this realization. She wasn't just guiding a conversation, she was shaping a movement, stepping firmly into her purpose. Now is the time to embrace your journey and connect with others through shared stories. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.